The rain does not just fall that night. It presses against the city like a weight, turning sidewalks into rivers and neon lights into smeared streaks on the glass. On the 8th floor of a tired old building, Grace Miller stands in the kitchen with one hand on the counter and the other on a crumpled eviction notice. 30 days. That is all the landlord is giving her. 30 days to catch up on rent that keeps slipping further and further out of reach. A cough echoes down the hallway. Mom. Noah's voice is small, sleepy. Grace folds the paper so fast it crackles, shoving it into the back pocket of her jeans before he turns the corner in his dinosaur pajamas. His curls are wild from sleep, cheeks flushed from the stuffy apartment. Hey, buddy, she says, kneeling to his height. You're supposed to be in bed. School tomorrow, remember? My chest feels tight, he whispers, pressing a hand to his ribs. Grace feels it like a punch. Not tonight, please not tonight. She checks the clock on the microwave. 9:12 p.m. Her night shift starts at 10. The inhaler on the counter is already half empty. The last refill went on a credit card that cried every time she swiped it. She helps Noah with 2 steady breaths of medicine, waits until the wheeze softens. Better? She asks. He nods, tired. Are you going to work at the big houses again? He always calls them that, the big houses, like they are a different planet. In a way, they are. Yeah, she says. Just cleaning. I'll be back before you wake up. That is supposed to be the rule. She works. A neighbor in 4B, Mrs. Jenkins, sleeps on the couch for a tiny fee and keeps an eye on Noah. It is not perfect, but it has kept child services away and the lights mostly on. Grace reaches for her phone to call Mrs. Jenkins, already rehearsing the apologetic tone in her head. The call goes straight to voicemail. She tries again. Same thing. Third time, it does not even ring. A text pops up instead. Honey, I'm at the ER. Blood pressure. I'm so sorry. I can't make it tonight. Grace feels the floor tilt. Her fingers fly across the screen. Are you okay? Do you need anything? 3 dots appear, then disappear. No answer. She stares at the phone. At the time, at the rain streaking down the outside of the kitchen window like the sky is melting. If she misses this shift, she does not just lose one night's pay. The cleaning agency has warned her twice about unreliable behavior. One more no-show, and she is done. No clients. No mansion gigs. No tips. Just that eviction notice turning from a threat into a fact. She looks at Noah. He is rubbing sleep from his eyes with the back of his fist, leaning against the doorway like a much smaller, much more fragile version of her. Mom. Yeah. You're making that face again. What face? She tries to smile. The math face. When you're adding bills in your head. She lets out a breathy laugh that is half sob. Even at 8, Noah reads her too well. Grace moves fast then, because if she stops to think, she will break. She pulls out his little rain jacket from the hook by the door, grabs her own thin coat, and shoves a granola bar into her bag along with the inhaler. You're coming with me, she says. Just for tonight. His eyes widen. To the big house. To one of them, she answers. You'll stay in the staff room. I'll bring my phone. We'll be in and out. Like a spy mission, okay? He grins despite the late hour. Do I get a code name? Yeah. She zips his jacket up to his chin. Code name, Ninja Dinosaur. 23 minutes later, they are on the bus, the only passengers besides a guy asleep in a hoodie and a woman scrolling through her phone with chipped red nails. The bus hums, the rain drums, and Noah leans against her shoulder, drawing smiley faces on the fogged-up window. Grace clutches the strap of her bag like it is the only thing tethering her to the earth. Every time the bus lurches, she sees the agency manager's face in her mind. Bored, unimpressed, already done with her. You know this place, she tells Noah as the bus climbs into the hills where the houses grow bigger and farther apart. We cleaned it once last month during the day, with the fountain in the driveway. The one that looks like a movie? That one. She does not tell him the client's name because names like that do not belong in their mouths. Ethan. Cole. Founder and CEO of Cole Harbor Investments. Net worth somewhere north of what her brain can comfortably imagine. Every time she has cleaned that mansion, she has done it quietly, invisibly, like a ghost. Tonight will be the same, only with a small co-ghost hiding in the staff room. The bus drops them at a stop that might as well be the edge of another universe. The rain here feels cleaner somehow, falling on manicured lawns and high stone walls instead of cracked sidewalks. Grace pulls Noah's hood up, takes his hand, and starts the walk up the winding road. When the gates of the coal estate finally appear out of the mist, tall, black iron with a discreet logo worked into the bars, Noah actually stops walking. Whoa, he breathes. The driveway curves in a perfect arc, lights glowing along the edges, leading toward a mansion made of glass and pale stone. Warm light spills from tall windows. Somewhere inside that glowing palace is a man who earns more in a minute than she earns in a month. Somewhere inside is a stack of white counters, spotless floors, gleaming chrome that will make her knees ache by sunrise. She squeezes Noah's hand. "Remember the rules," she says softly. "You stay with me until I show you the staff room. You don't touch anything. You don't wander. You whisper, okay?" He nods solemnly. "Yes, ma'am." Ninja Dinosaur understands. She forces a smile and presses the buzzer. A camera blinks to life above their heads. A disembodied voice crackles through the intercom. "Yes. This is Grace Miller with crystal clear cleaning," she says, injecting false cheer into her voice. "Here for the 10 p.m. deep clean." There is a pause. The gates slide open with a low mechanical sigh. As they step through, into a world of money and polished stone, Grace has no idea that this desperate, reckless decision, bringing her son to work, will not just cost her a job. It will rearrange everything she thinks she knows about power, kindness, and what home can mean. If this story moves you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. Grace tightens her grip on Noah's hand and walks toward the front door, unaware that someone is watching their small silhouettes move through the rain on a security screen inside. Inside, the air smells like money and lemon polish. The foyer is double height, with a chandelier that looks like someone froze a waterfall mid-cascade. Noah's sneakers squeak on the marble before Grace shoots him a warning look, and he tiptoes instead. The night's supervisor from the cleaning agency, a woman named Carla with tired eyes and a clipboard, waits near the staircase. She arches a brow when she sees Noah. "Grace," she says under her breath. "What is this?" "Mrs. Jenkins had a medical emergency," Grace whispers back. "There was no one else. He'll stay out of the way. I promise." Carla pinches the bridge of her nose, glancing toward the hallway that leads deeper into the house. "We're not supposed to bring family. You know that." "Please," Grace says, feeling shame burn the back of her throat. "I can't lose this shift. Just give me tonight. If the client asks, I'll take full blame." Carla studies Noah, who is standing as straight as he can, hands folded like he is in church. "What's your name, kid?" "Noah," he answers. "I'm on a spy mission." Something like a smile twitches at the corner of Carla's mouth. "All right, Agent Noah. There's a small room off the kitchen where staff nap between events. He can stay there. But if the owner sees him..." She does not finish the sentence. "She does not have to." Grace nods quickly. "He won't." 10 minutes later, Noah is tucked into a narrow staff couch with his backpack as a pillow and her coat as a blanket. She sets her phone to vibrate and places it in his hand. "If you feel weird, or if your chest hurts, you call me. I'll be 2 rooms away, tops." "Deal." "Deal," he says, already yawning. "Can I watch something?" "No sound," she says, but she taps a downloaded cartoon on the screen, volume off. "Headphones broke, remember?" "Right," he sighs. "Love you, Ninja Boss. Love you more." She kisses his forehead, then forces herself to walk away. The next 2 hours blur into a familiar rhythm. Vacuum lines into thick white carpet, wipe down kitchen counters, polish chrome fixtures until she can see her own face in them. The mansion is quieter than usual tonight. No party, no catering staff, just the echo of her own footsteps and the distant hum of something. Hey, TV, music, a man talking on the phone in a low-clipped tone. Once, when she is dusting the edge of a huge bookshelf in the library, she hears his voice more clearly through the cracked door to a home office. "I understand the numbers," he says, irritation under the surface. "I'm not asking about the yield, Tom. I'm asking about the people. How many families are we kicking out with this rent hike?" Grace freezes, feather duster in midair. She should not be listening. She really should not. "Hundreds," the other man replies, speakerphone making his voice tinny. "But your investors can wait," the first man cuts in. "Send me the properties where the increase hits the hardest. I want names. Addresses." There is a pause, then a sigh. "You're getting soft, Ethan." "Ethan." She already knows the last name, Cole. It sits on every folder in the library, printed in silver on the corner. Cole Harbor Investments. Grace's stomach knots. She backs away from the door before she hears the rest. The person on that call, the one debating rent hikes, is the same person who owns the roof over her head, who could, with one signature, push her and Noah onto the street. And she is here wiping dust off his shelves. Life has a cruel sense of humor. By midnight, the rain outside has turned into a steady hiss, like white noise. Most of the house is dark now, lights dimmed by automatic timers. Grace checks on Noah twice. The first time, he is awake, scrolling through drawings on her phone, humming quietly. The second, close to 1 a.m, he is asleep, mouth slightly open, curls falling over his eyes. She tucks her coat around his shoulders and, without thinking, takes off her own sweatshirt and lays it over his legs. The staff room is cold. The central air favors the front of the house, where important people walk. "You shouldn't be here," she whispers, more to herself than to him. "But I don't know what else to do." Back in the main hallway, she is kneeling to scrub a stubborn scuff mark off the marble when she hears it, the soft scuff of bare feet. She looks up. A man stands at the top of the staircase, hands in the pockets of a dark t-shirt, dress slacks hanging just right. Even at this distance, the blue of his eyes cuts through the dim light. His hair is slightly mussed, like he has been running his hands through it. Ethan Cole. She has seen his face on Forbes covers and financial news segments playing silently on TVs and diners. In person, he looks less polished and more tired. "You're with the cleaning crew?" he asks. His voice is lower, calmer than it had been on the phone. She scrambles to her feet, gripping the handle of the mop like a lifeline. "Yes, sir." "Grace Miller. We're almost done. I'll be out of your way soon." His gaze flicks to the bucket, then back to her. "I'm not timing you," he says. "I just didn't realize the agency sent someone this late." "Deep clean," she answers, wishing her cheeks did not burn. Apparently millionaires like everything to shine before they sleep. It slips out before she can stop it. For a second, she thinks she has ruined everything. Then the corner of his mouth lifts. "Just barely." "Apparently," he says. There is a beat of silence. He nods toward the side hallway. "You know there's a staff bathroom down there?" "Yes, sir." "And that the east wing is off limits?" "The alarm is set on those doors after midnight." "Yes, sir. I'll stay clear." "Good." He starts to turn away, then pauses. "You have a kid." The words hit like cold water. Sorry. "In the staff room," he says. You whispered good night loud enough that half the cameras picked it up. He says it without malice, more like he is stating a fact in a meeting. Still, Grace feels her stomach drop. "I'm sorry," she rushes out. "My sitter had an emergency. I couldn't miss this shift. He's asleep. He won't touch anything. If you want me to leave, do you always bring him?" Ethan asks. "No, never." Her voice shakes. "Tonight was a one-time thing. I just ran out of options." He studies her for a long second, eyes unreadable. Somewhere behind him, thunder rumbles over the ocean. "What's his name?" "Noah." "How old is he?" 8. Ethan's jaw works like he is chewing on something he does not like the taste of. "You're not supposed to bring children here," he says finally. "There are liability issues." "Security." The words are sharp, corporate. Exactly what she expected. The fear that has been simmering all night spikes. "I understand," she says. "Please don't report me to the agency. I'll finish as fast as I can and we'll be gone." Ethan looks past her, toward the front doors where rain smears the glass. The wind howls. The driveway lights bend under the weight of the storm. "You're not going anywhere tonight," he says quietly. "That road floods in 10 minutes. If you try to catch a bus, you'll be standing ankle-deep in water." "We'll manage," she insists. "We always do." "This isn't about you managing," he replies. "It's about me not wanting to read tomorrow that someone's kid got sick because I sent them out into a storm after they mopped my floors." He exhales, decision settling over his features. "Finish the foyer. Then take him to the small guest room off the kitchen. It's warmer. He can sleep there." Grace blinks. "You're not firing me?" "Not tonight," Ethan says. "Just don't make me regret it." He turns away, disappearing back up the stairs, leaving her standing in his gleaming foyer, mop in hand, heart pounding. She has no idea that in a few hours, the distance between cleaning staff and billionaire will shrink to the length of a whispered bedtime story. Grace keeps her head down as she finishes the foyer, but every nerve feels awake now. Ethan's footsteps have faded, yet his presence lingers in the quiet halls, in the way the security cameras blink in the corners. When the marble finally gleams and the last trash bag is tied, she washes her hands in the staff sink and tiptoes back to the tiny room where Noah sleeps. His knees are pulled up, her sweatshirt slipping off his legs. The hum of the refrigerator in the adjoining pantry makes the room feel colder than it is. She thinks of Ethan's words, small guest room off the kitchen, warmer, and before she can talk herself out of it, she scoops Noah's backpack up and gently shakes his shoulder. Hey, ninja dinosaur, she murmurs. Time to relocate the mission. Wah! He blinks, eyes glassy with sleep. Are we going home? Not yet, she says. The storm is too crazy. But the big house guy said you can sleep in a better room. The big house guy? Noah asks around a yawn. Like, the boss of all the big houses. Something like that, she answers. She leads him down. A side corridor she has only ever passed by before. At the end is a door she has always assumed was another pantry. Tonight, it is cracked open, a warm amber light spilling onto the tile. Inside, the small guest room is more like a cozy hotel. There is a twin bed with a thick quilt, a small lamp on a nightstand, a painting of the ocean on the wall. The air is warmer, scented faintly with linen and salt. Noah's eyes go round. Are you sure we're allowed in here? We have temporary clearance, she says. From the boss himself. She helps him climb into the bed. He sinks into it with a sigh. It's like sleeping on a marshmallow, he mumbles. Grace pulls the quilt up to his chin. Without thinking, she sits on the edge of the bed. Want a story? His answer is automatic. Yeah. She glances around. No bookshelf. No stack of battered children's books like at home. Just a sleek digital clock and a lamp worth more than her couch. Okay, improv, she says. Once upon a time, there was a ninja dinosaur on a secret mission in a castle on top of a hill. Nobody knew he was there except his top secret partner, Agent Mom. Noah smiles, eyes drooping. What does the castle look like? It has too many windows, she says, glancing at the small square of glass above the bed. Rain streaks down it in bright lines. And the guy who owns it works too much and probably doesn't eat enough real food. Is he mean? Noah asks. Grace pauses. She pictures Ethan at the top of the stairs, jaw tight, but also the way his voice had softened when he talked about Noah not going out into the storm. I don't know yet, she says honestly. Maybe he's just lonely and doesn't know what to do with all his money. Noah's breathing evens out, the lines of worry smoothing from his forehead. Grace keeps talking anyway, because the sound comforts her too. One night, there was a huge storm. The ninja dinosaur and Agent Mom got stuck in the castle. And that's when everything started to change, even though they didn't know it yet. In the hallway, unnoticed, a red light blinks on a small camera above the door. Somewhere on a screen in a dark control room, a security guard watches for a second as a woman with tired eyes tells a story to her half-asleep son, then turns the feed off out of respect. Grace gets up only when Noah is fully asleep, his hand still clutching the edge of her sweatshirt like a security blanket. She pulls her coat over her own shoulders and steps back into the hallway, intending to finish wiping down the kitchen counters before resting her eyes on a chair. Instead, she finds Ethan leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, watching her. She startles, hand flying to her chest. You move like a ghost, she says before she can stop herself. He huffs a quiet breath that might be a laugh. I was making tea, he says, nodding toward the kitchen. A mug steams on the counter behind him. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. On what? She asks, heat rushing into her face. My high-budget fairy tale? On how you talk to him, Ethan says. You make a storm sound like an adventure. Grace shrugs, suddenly aware of her frizzy ponytail, her faded t-shirt with the half-scrubbed soap stain on the hem. Kids don't need to worry about the things adults wreck, she says. Rent. Jobs. Whatever that guy on the phone was yelling about earlier. Ethan's eyes sharpen. You heard that. Sorry, she says quickly. The library door was open. I wasn't trying to. I know my place. What does that mean, he asks. Your place. Mopping the floor, she replies. Not weighing in on business deals that affect half the city. She means it as a joke, but it comes out brittle. Ethan studies her, taking in the dark circles under her eyes. How long have you been with the agency? 1.5 years, she says. Before that, diners, retail, whatever would pay enough to keep the lights on. And before that, he presses. Grace bristles. Is this an interview? Maybe, he says. Humor me. She sighs. Community college. Interior design. Until Noah's dad decided he wasn't cut out for being a father, and I couldn't juggle classes, work, and pregnancy at the same time. Real-life fairy tale, right? She spreads her hands in a mock tada. Ethan's expression changes almost imperceptibly. You studied design, he repeats. That must make cleaning houses feel frustrating. Cleaning houses means my kid can breathe, she counters. I don't have the luxury of being frustrated. I just have the luxury of buying his inhaler on time. The honesty hangs between them. Ethan shifts his weight, looking like he is not used to people talking to him this way. And the building you live in? He asks slowly. It's not great. She lets out a humorless laugh. You mean the peeling paint or the mysterious leak in the stairwell? Or the fact that the landlord just dropped an eviction notice because I'm behind on rent and the prices keep climbing? Ethan's jaw tightens. They raised your rent recently? Twice, she says. But I'm sure whoever owns the place needed a new yacht. She does not see the way his face goes still at that. Do you know who your landlord is? He asks. Yeah. Some faceless company with a P.O. box and a phone number that never picks up. Harbor Holdings or something. Ethan feels the floor shift under his feet. Harbor Holdings is one of his shells, a subsidiary of Cole Harbor. On paper, he owns her leaky stairwell. He swallows. Right, he says, voice quieter. Companies like that can be detached. Grace shrugs. Detached is one word for it. She rubs her arms, suddenly aware of the hour and the ache in her spine. Look, I should let you get back to whatever billionaires do at 2 a.m. Thank you for letting Noah sleep in there. I'll be gone before sunrise. Ethan watches her for a beat longer. There is something new in his eyes now, something that was not there before. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity. Grace, he says as she turns to go. She glances back. Yeah. You said earlier you know your place, he says. For what it is worth. I'm starting to think I don't know mine as well as I thought. She does not know what to do with that. So she just nods and retreats toward the kitchen, his words echoing after her as the storm beats against the walls of the house that binds their worlds together for one strange, sleepless night. Morning comes in muted gold. The storm has rinsed the sky clean, leaving a pale blue strip over the ocean that the mansion seems to lean toward. Grace wakes with a start in a kitchen chair, neck aching, a cleaning rag still in her hand. For a split second, she does not remember where she is. Then the smell of expensive coffee and the gleam of stainless steel snap everything back into place. Noah. She drops the rag and rushes to the guest room. The bed is empty. The quilt is folded. Panic spikes so fast she tastes metal. Noah. Her voice cracks as she spins back into the hall. Before the fear can fully bloom, she hears it. Laughter from the direction of the breakfast nook. 2 voices. One small, one deeper. She follows the sound and stops dead in the doorway. The breakfast nook is all glass and sunlight, tucked into a corner with a view that looks like a postcard. Waves hitting the rocks below, gulls riding the air. At the table sits Ethan in a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, tie draped over the back of his chair. Across from him, with a napkin bib knotted around his neck, is Noah. In front of Noah is a plate of pancakes shaped like dinosaur footprints and a small mountain of strawberries. Mom. Noah beams when he sees her. Mr. Ethan made footprints. He points at his pancakes as proof. Grace's first instinct is to apologize, to explain, to somehow rewind the last 24 hours until they are anonymous again. I'm so sorry, she blurts. He wasn't supposed to. Relax, Ethan says, standing. He knocked on my office door at 6 a.m. looking for you. I figured the least I could do was not let him starve. Grace looks from her son to the billionaire, struggling to process the casual domesticity of the scene. You didn't have to, she says quietly. I know. Ethan pours coffee into a second mug and slides it toward her. But I wanted to. The smell alone almost makes her knees buckle. She has not had coffee that wasn't instant in months. Thank you, she murmurs, fingers curling around the warm ceramic. Noah chews happily. Mom, did you know Mr. Ethan has a pool inside his house? And a room with just guitars on the wall? And a dog robot that cleans up crumbs. It's a Roomba, buddy, Grace says weakly. Ethan hides a smile behind his mug. There is a knock at the open doorway. Carla, the night supervisor, hovers there with an expression like she walked in on a crime. Behind her, the house manager, a man in his 50s with a silver beard, and the posture of a retired general, stands stiff as a statue. Mr. Cole, the manager begins, eyes flicking to Noah, then to Grace. We need to discuss last night's breach of protocol. There it is. The other shoe. Grace straightens, instinctively moving a little closer to her son. Ethan sets his mug down. Go ahead, Marcus. Staff are not permitted to bring children onto the property, Marcus says, for insurance and security reasons. This was a serious violation. The agency has been notified. We recommend terminating Ms. Miller's placement permanently. Carla avoids Grace's eyes, guilt written in the slump of her shoulders. I'm sorry, Grace, she mutters. Policy is policy. The words hit harder than Grace expects. She knew this was coming, but hearing it out loud makes her stomach hollow out. She swallows. It's okay, she says, though it is not at all. She turns to Ethan. Thank you for the room last night. And the pancakes. We'll get out of your way. Noah looks up, senses something shifting. Are we in trouble? He whispers. No. She lies automatically. You're not going anywhere yet. Ethan cuts in. His tone has changed. The easy, almost playful cadence from a moment ago is gone, replaced by something colder, more precise. The version of him that commands boardrooms. Marcus, cancel the report to the agency. Marcus blinks. Sir, you heard me. Ethan's gaze does not waver. Ms. Miller is not to be blacklisted. In fact, I want her assigned here whenever possible. Grace stares. You don't have to do that, she says. I broke your rules. You made a judgment call in an impossible situation, Ethan says. The liability is my problem, not yours. Marcus's jaw tightens. With respect, sir, if we appear to bend the rules for one employee, it sets a precedent. And the board? Ethan raises a hand, silencing him. I am the board, he says quietly. And this conversation is over. The room seems to shrink. Marcus inclines his head stiffly and leaves. Carla mumbles another apology and follows. When they are gone, Grace exhales like she has been holding her breath for an hour. You just made your staff hate me, she says. They'll survive, Ethan replies. They're paid well. She wants to argue, but Noah is watching, eyes huge. So she just nods, tucking gratitude and unease into the same compartment in her chest. 10 minutes later, they are walking down the long driveway toward the now clear road. Noah is still talking about mechanical dogs and ocean views. Grace keeps glancing back at the house, its windows gleaming in the early light. There is something about leaving that feels like walking away from a crossroads she did not know she was standing at. On the bus, Noah presses his face to the window. Do you think we'll ever go back? He asks. Probably not, she says. Big houses like that don't need the same cleaner forever. But Mr. Ethan said, people say things in the morning that don't make sense later, she interrupts gently. Don't get attached, okay? Noah is quiet for a moment. I liked him, he says finally. He listens funny, but he laughs for real. Her chest squeezes. Yeah, she says softly. He does. That afternoon, after a brief, awkward call from Carla confirming that her job is technically safe for now, Grace goes in late to a different client, a dentist's office that smells like fluoride and childhood dread. Between scrubbing waiting room chairs, she checks her bank balance on her phone and nearly laughs. The rent, the medical copay, the overdue electric bill, they all march across her mind in a grim little parade. One storm-laced night in a mansion has not changed any of that. Not yet. On the other side of the city, high above the water, Ethan sits in his home office with a file folder open in front of him. The label on the side reads Harbor Holdings, Rental Portfolio. He flips to a tab marked Peerview Apartments. Tenant list. Lease terms. Planned rent increases highlighted in yellow. Halfway down the page, his eyes catch on a name, Miller, Grace, Unit 8B. He leans back in his chair, the leather creaking. The conversation from the night before plays in his head again. Harbor Holdings or something, she had said. Some faceless company with a P.O. box. He stares at his own logo on the page. Suddenly, it does not look like success. It looks like distance. It looks like an excuse. He presses the intercom button. Rachel. His assistant's voice crackles through. Yes, Mr. Cole. I need the full impact report on the Peerview rent adjustment, he says. family units, income levels, alternative housing options. And I want it by this afternoon. There's a pause. You already signed off on that change last quarter. Then I'll unsign it, he replies. Pull the paperwork. Another pause, then a careful, of course. Ethan ends the call and looks back at Grace's name. It is one thing to talk about tenant churn and market correction in abstract terms. It is another to picture an 8-year-old boy with pancake syrup on his chin and inhaler medication on the line. He taps his pen against the desk, a new, unsettling thought forming. Maybe last night was not an accident. Maybe it was the first crack in a wall he has spent years building between himself and the people standing under the weight of his decisions. He is still thinking about that when his phone buzzes with a calendar alert. Quarterly strategy meeting in 1 hour. He closes the folder but does not put it away. Instead, he slips it into his briefcase. For once, the story of peer view and the woman who cleans his floors while worrying about her own will have a seat at the table. What he does next will determine whether that stormy night was just an anomaly or the beginning of something that will change all of their lives. The conference room on the 42nd floor has a view that makes the city look small, like a toy set someone dropped at the edge of the ocean. Ethan usually likes that feeling. Today, it makes him uneasy. The senior team sits around the gleaming table, CFOs, legal counsel, the head of acquisitions. Laptops glow. Charts line the wall screens. As you can see, Tom, his CFO, is saying, laser pointer circling a rising graph. The peer view adjustment alone adds 3% to our quarterly revenue projections. Multiply that across the portfolio, and we're talking millions. A few heads nod. Someone mutters, beautiful. Ethan stares at the graph. All he can see is a cramped kitchen with peeling linoleum and a boy coughing into his mother's shoulder. What about displacement, he asks. The room quiets. Tom frowns. Excuse me. How many families have to move when we raise those rents? Ethan clarifies. Where do they go? How much does it cost them to relocate? What does that do to their kids' school situations? Tom exchanges a look with the head of analytics, a woman named Priya. We don't have those numbers, Priya admits. We track vacancy rates and refill times, not personal details. Start, Ethan says. Tom clears his throat. Ethan, I understand you had a personal experience last night that might be coloring this conversation, but we can't run a multi-billion-dollar asset portfolio on feelings. The words are meant as a gentle rebuke. They land like a challenge. Ethan's hand tightens around his pen. We've been telling ourselves that for years, he says evenly. And yet every time I sign off on one of these increases, I picture another kid packing up his bedroom because someone in this room wanted an extra 3%. Silence. Priya shifts in her seat. With respect, she says softly. It wouldn't be impossible to create a model that balances yield with community stability. We'd take a short-term hit. But, Tom shoots her a look. That's not what we're here. That's exactly what we're here to discuss. Ethan interrupts. He taps the peer view file he has placed in the center of the table. Effective immediately, the peer view rent increase is canceled. We're freezing all hikes on family units citywide until we have a better framework. We are also launching a community center pilot on-site at Peerview, using the vacant ground floor as a resource space. The general counsel's eyebrows shoot up. A community center? Ethan nods once. Tutoring, job placement, after-school programs. We already own the space. It's sitting empty. Who's going to run it? Tom demands. You? Ethan's mind goes to Grace, her offhand comment about interior design school. The way she knew how to turn a cold guest room into a storybook for her son with nothing but her voice. I have someone in mind, he says. We'll reallocate a portion of our philanthropy budget. Put real money into this instead of another gala photo op. The room erupts in low-level protest. Words like fiduciary duty and shareholder expectations float in the air. Ethan listens, lets them vent, then leans forward, eyes hard. Our brand is built on the idea that we make cities better, he says. Not that we vacuum value out of them and leave families scrambling. If that's going to be true, it starts here. If anyone has a problem with that, my door is open. But the decision is made. One by one, the objections quiet. Priya looks at him with something like respect. Tom looks grudgingly impressed. When the meeting finally adjourns, Ethan feels wrung out, but, for the first time in years, also strangely awake. That evening, While the city glows with the amber of streetlights and restaurant signage, Grace drags herself up the stairs to 8B, shoulders aching from a double shift. The envelope taped to her door stops her cold. The landlord's logo is in the corner. She presses a hand to the paper, bracing for the worst. Another eviction notice. A court date. Instead, the letter inside is different. Effective immediately, all rental rate increases scheduled for Pierview apartments are canceled. It reads, previous balances will be restructured into a long-term, interest-free payment plan. We appreciate your tenancy. At the bottom, in ink, is a signature she recognizes from business magazines and the tiny framed Forbes cover that hangs outside the property management office. Ethan Cole. Her first reaction is suspicion. This has to be a mistake. Her second is a wave of relief, so strong it almost knocks her back into the hallway. Mom. Noah peers out from behind her, backpack slipping off one shoulder. Did we get kicked out? She swallows the lump in her throat and forces a smile. Not today, buddy, she says. Looks like we get to keep our hideout a little longer. Later, when Noah is building a lopsided fortress out of cereal boxes on the living room floor, her phone buzzes with an unknown number. She hesitates, then answers. Hello. Grace. It's Ethan. She grips the cheap kitchen counter to steady herself. Did I forget a trash bag or something? He chuckles softly. No. Though the wine cellar has never looked better. There is a pause. You got the letter? I did, she says slowly. You didn't have to do that. Maybe I did, he answers. Look, I'm not calling to ask for gratitude. I'm calling because I need help. That throws her. With what? I have empty ground floor space at Pierview, he says. I'm turning it into a community center. I want someone who actually lives there to help design it. Someone who knows what families in that building need. Someone who can argue with me when I get it wrong. Grace sinks into a chair. You're serious. Dead serious, he says. I can hire 100 consultants who will give me glossy PowerPoints. I'd rather have one person who actually knows how it feels when the elevator breaks for the third time in a week. I'm a cleaner, she says. And a mom. That's my resume. You also went to school for interior design, he reminds her. You understand space. You understand people. And you're not afraid to tell me when I sound like a jerk. That combination is rare. She cannot help the small laugh that escapes her. What would this help pay? He names a number that makes her go silent. It is not billionaire money, but it is steady, dignified money, more than she has ever made in her life. Enough to catch her breath. Enough to maybe, finally, exhale. You'd be an employee of the Cole Foundation, he adds. Benefits. Health insurance for you and Noah. The word insurance makes her vision blur. No more late-night pharmacy calls begging for discount inhalers. No more choosing between groceries and copays. Why me, she whispers. Because last night you told me the truth, he says. And it stung. And I need more of that in my life, apparently. She stares at the peeling paint above the stove, at the cracked tile, at the little drawings Noah has taped up to make the place less sad. I don't want to be your charity case, she says. Then don't, he replies. Be my partner on this. Tell me what needs to change. Use my money to build something that actually matters to people like you. People like Noah. The line stretches between them, full of possibility and fear. Finally, she says, okay, I'll help. But I'm not wearing a pencil skirt and pretending to be someone I'm not. He laughs, genuinely this time. Deal. We'll start tomorrow morning. I'll have a car pick you up at 9. A car. We're trying to change your life, Grace, he says. Not your bus schedule. When she hangs up, Noah is staring at her from the doorway, cereal box castle abandoned. Who was that, he asks. She reaches out and pulls him into a hug, pressing her face into his hair. Remember your big house guy, she says. He just invited us to help fix this place. Like superheroes? Noah asks. She smiles against his shoulder. Something like that, she says. Only this time, we get to build the castle instead of just cleaning it. The next morning, when a sleek black SUV pulls up in front of Pierview, the neighbors peer through cracked blinds like it is a UFO landing. Grace feels every eye on her as she and Noah step onto the sidewalk. She has swapped her faded cleaning polo for a simple navy blouse and dark jeans. Still her, just upgraded. Noah clutches his backpack, practically vibrating. Do I have to go to school, he asks. Yes, she says. Superheroes still do math. Even Batman. Especially Batman. The driver opens the door with a polite nod. Ms. Miller? Mr. Cole is expecting you. Noah's mouth drops. We have a driver, he whispers. Do we tip him? Do we bow? What do we do? We say thank you, Grace replies. We don't lick the leather seats. Those are the rules. 15 minutes later, they pull up to the Cole Foundation's glass-fronted office downtown. Inside, the world smells like fresh coffee and new carpet. The receptionist greets them by name. It feels like stepping into someone else's life. Ethan meets them in the lobby, no tie this time, just a crisp shirt, and that same underlying tiredness. When he sees Noah, his face softens in a way Grace does not expect. Hey, ninja dinosaur, he says, crouching slightly to Noah's level. Ready for school? Noah grins. Do you have a helicopter? Grace groans. We took the SUV, remember? Ethan chuckles. We'll work up to helicopters. Come on, I'll walk you to the corner. The school's only a block away. The three of them step back onto the sidewalk. For a brief, strange moment, they look like any other little family navigating morning traffic. Kid between two adults, coffee in one hand, backpack in the other. Grace feels the fantasy and quickly reminds herself it is not real. This is a job interview dressed up as a favor. Still, when Ethan insists on waiting until Noah disappears through the school doors, she notices the way his eyes track the boy, like he is relearning what it means to worry about a small person. Back at the foundation, Ethan leads her into a conference room that is very different from the one upstairs. The walls are covered in whiteboards, community maps, photos from charity events. On the table, spread out like puzzle pieces, are blueprints for the ground floor of Pierview. Okay, he says, gesturing for her to sit. Show me what I'm not seeing. She studies the drawings. The proposed layout is sleek, clean, and completely wrong. This dead space. Here, she says, pointing to a corner marked Administration. You're giving the office the best light and shoving the kids' area into the back. If you want people to feel welcome, flip it. Put the messy stuff where the sun hits. Adults already spend all day in dingy rooms. Ethan watches as she moves sticky notes around, her hands steady, voice gaining confidence. And this entrance, she continues. You've got one door. That's fine for security, but you need a side door from the courtyard so parents with strollers don't have to drag them through the whole building. We can add a ramp, Ethan says, noting it down. And what about programming? What would you put in here if you had full control? The question is like oxygen. Ideas pour out of her. Homework help stations, a small library of gently used books, a quiet corner with armchairs for adults to fill out job applications, a kitchenette for cooking classes. And we need a bulletin board, she says. Not some digital screen. A rail board where people can pin things, babysitting offers, carpool lists, flyers. Make it feel like theirs, not like some rich guy's PR project. Ethan leans back, a slow smile pulling at his mouth. I knew I called the right person, he says. Hours pass in what feels like minutes. By the time they break for lunch, the blueprints are covered in colored ink and sticky notes, the initial design almost unrecognizable. As they eat takeout salads at the conference table, Grace realizes she has not thought about scrubbing a toilet once all morning. She has thought about color palettes and traffic flow and how a kid feels walking into a room after school. It feels like waking up a part of herself she buried in a drawer marked someday, 8 years ago. You're good at this, Ethan says between bites. You should have finished that degree. Tell that to tuition costs, she says. And to the guy who bailed when diapers got real. Ethan's jaw tightens. He doesn't see Noah? His choice, she answers. Our door is open. He just never knocks. They fall quiet. There is an intimacy and shared silence that surprises them both. In the weeks that follow, planning turns into action. Contractors move into Pierview's ground floor. Grace meets with residents in the laundry room and the courtyard, asking what they want from a center like this. At first, they side-eye her, suspicious of anyone associated with the landlord. But when they see her face light up talking about free ESL classes and tutoring, their shoulders loosen. She spends her mornings at the foundation, afternoons on site, evenings still taking occasional cleaning shifts to pad her savings. Noah becomes a regular at the half-finished center, drawing rocket ships on the drywall that the painters carefully work around. Ethan visits often, ditching his suit jacket to walk the dusty site in rolled-up sleeves. The first time he shows up in jeans, the tenants whisper like a movie star just walked onto their block. One Thursday, as they stand in what will eventually be the reading corner, Grace catches Ethan staring at the ceiling. "What's wrong?" she asks. "Lighting." "No," he says. "I was just thinking about my mother. She used to volunteer at a place like this when we were barely scraping by. She said it was the only thing that made our apartment feel less small, seeing other people fight the same battles." Grace studies his face. The usual steel is softer around the edges. "You never talk about her," she says. "You never ask," he counters gently. She lifts a brow. "I'm asking now." He tells her, haltingly at first, about his mom working 2 jobs, about nights he spent sleeping in the back of a diner while she closed up, about the old community center that became his unofficial babysitter. "I always told myself I'd buy her a house one day," he says. "Instead, she died in a rental I never bothered to inspect." The regret in his voice makes her chest ache. "You built a lot of houses," she says quietly. "Maybe you just forgot who they were for." Their eyes meet. For a moment, the dusty, echoing room doesn't feel like a construction site. It feels like a confession booth. Someone coughs nearby. A contractor asks Ethan about a permit. The spell breaks, but something has shifted. That night, after Noah falls asleep, Grace sits at her kitchen table with her old design textbooks spread out like tarot cards. She flips through pages of color theory and spatial planning, feeling the spark of old dreams catching again. Her phone buzzes. A text from Ethan. "Prototype couches arrived today. Your reading corner is going to put bookstores to shame." She smiles despite herself and types back before she can overthink it. "Don't jinx it, Castle Guy." 3 dots appear. "Castle Guy," he replies. "You live on a hill in a mansion with 2 mini windows," she sends. "Own it." "Fine," he writes. "But if I'm Castle Guy, you're the one turning it into something worth defending." She sets the phone down, cheeks warm. Little by little, line by line, the story that started as a desperate choice in a storm is becoming something else, something that looks suspiciously like hope. When the community center finally opens, it is not with a red carpet and a swarm of cameras. It is with folding chairs, mismatched cupcakes, and a hand-painted sign one of the teenagers made the night before. The letters are a little crooked, but the words are perfect. Peer View Commons. A place for US. Grace stands near the entrance, heart pounding, as neighbors stream in. Kids make a beeline for the game corner, eyes wide at the shelves stocked with board games and donated consoles. Parents hover near the bulletin board she insisted on, reading flyers about GED classes and resume workshops. The smell of coffee and cheap pizza fills the air, somehow comforting instead of sad. Ethan arrives without fanfare, no entourage, just a navy blazer over a t-shirt and jeans. He looks around, taking in the clusters of people, the way the room hums with a kind of cautious joy. "You did this," he says when he reaches Grace. She shakes her head. "We did this. Them mostly." She nods toward a group of moms, organizing a sign-up sheet at one table. "I just handed out sticky notes and asked what they needed." He smiles. "You also bullied me into cutting my office space in half." "You'll survive," she says. A local reporter from a small community paper shows up with a camera, drawn by word of mouth. She corners Ethan and Grace near the snack table. "Mr. Cole," she says, "most developers just raise rents and move on. Why this?" Ethan glances at Grace before answering. "Because for too long I thought returns were just numbers," he says. "But returns are people. They're kids. They're stories like Grace's. If we're going to build anything in this city, it should be something that lets families stay, not forces them out." The reporter turns to Grace. "And you? How does it feel to go from fighting eviction to running this place?" Grace almost says she is not running it, that she is just here to help. But then she looks around at the room, at Noah showing another kid how to use the donated keyboard, at Mrs. Jenkins sitting in a corner chair with a plate of cupcakes, at the landlord-tenant meetings happening informally by the coffee urn, and something in her spine straightens. "It feels like we finally have a say," she says. "Like our lives aren't just lines on somebody else's spreadsheet anymore." The reporter smiles. "I think our readers are going to want to hear a lot more about that. Not everyone is happy." A week after the opening, Ethan's boardroom fills with a different kind of tension. An older board member, Harold Green, slaps a copy of the community paper onto the table. Ethan's and Grace's faces stare up from the front page, framed by the words "Castle Guy meets the people." "What is this?" Harold demands. "You turning into a social worker now?" Ethan keeps his tone calm. "We're investing in the stability of our own assets," he says. Stable communities mean fewer vacancies, lower turnover, better long-term returns. You're letting some cleaning lady run your policy, Harold snaps. The room goes quiet. Ethan feels something cold settle over him. Her name is Grace Miller, he says. She's our community director for Peerview, and she understands that building better than anyone in this company. You'd do well to remember that. Harold scoffs. And what happens when the press starts calling this a vanity project? When shareholders ask why you're trading profits for sob stories? Ethan considers him. A year ago, he might have backed down, smoothed things over. Tonight, he thinks of Noah's laugh echoing off the center walls, of Grace's tired eyes lighting up when a team thanks her for the new study space. Then I'll tell them the truth, he says. That I built a fortune and almost forgot what it was for. That now, I'm trying to use it to keep families from falling through cracks I helped create. If they do not like that answer, they are free to find another CEO. The statement hangs in the air like a thrown gauntlet. No one picks it up. Later, he forwards the article to Grace with a single line, apparently. I'm Castle Guy in print now. She texts back a laughing emoji, and then, after a moment, you okay? He stares at the words longer than he should. People ask him about market forecasts and risk exposure all day. Nobody ever asks if he is okay. I am now, he replies. That weekend, he shows up at Peerview Commons unannounced, just as the Saturday tutoring session is wrapping up. Noah spots him first. Mr. Ethan, he calls, racing over. I got a B+ on my math test. That's fantastic, Ethan says, genuinely delighted. Clearly the center's working. Noah puffs up. Mom helped me. She's good at numbers, even when her math face is scary. Grace walks over, wiping marker off her hands. He's exaggerating, she says. Mostly. Ethan takes in the sight of her in a Peerview Commons t-shirt, hair in a messy bun, cheeks flushed from corralling kids. She looks happy. It hits him in a place he did not realize was empty. We're having a little pizza night later, she says. Nothing fancy. You're welcome to stay, if you don't mind greasy paper plates. Those are my favorite kind, he says. As evening settles, they end up on the low wall outside the building, slices in hand, watching neighborhood kids chase each other under the streetlights. Noah leans against Ethan's side without thinking, halfway between them on the wall. Grace catches the image and feels her heart stutter. It looks like the kind of family photo she used to cut out of magazines. That thought scares her enough that she stands abruptly. I should check on the trash, she says. If we leave it out, the raccoons throw a party. She heads for the back alley, needing space, not realizing that the real party, the real trouble, is about to find her on a much bigger stage. The invitation arrives 2 weeks later in an envelope so thick it feels like a book. Inside is heavy cream cardstock with embossed letters. Cole Harbor Annual Impact Gala. Dress code, black tie. Location, Ethan's mansion. Grace stares at it in her kitchen, still smelling faintly of tomato sauce from dinner. Must be a mistake, she mutters. Then she sees the handwritten note at the bottom. We're highlighting Peerview Commons as our flagship project. It says in neat blue ink. I'd like you to be there to tell the real story. Her first instinct is to say no. Gala means gowns and champagne, and people who use summer as a verb. It means walking back into the mansion not as invisible staff, but as a guest, a role she does not know how to play. But then she thinks of the tenants, of the kids painting signs, of the mothers who cried in the break room when the eviction notices were canceled. Their story deserves more than a polished corporate speech. So she borrows a dress from Mrs. Jenkins' granddaughter, simple black, fits like it was quietly rooting for this moment, and spends an hour watching online tutorials about how to do her hair in a way that says, I tried, without saying, I hired a stylist. When the SUV drops her at the foot of Ethan's driveway, the mansion looks different. Not because it has changed, but because she has. Lights cascade down the facade. Valets in dark suits usher guests from cars, the echo of high heels on stone filling the night air. Grace smooths her borrowed dress and steps out, nerves buzzing. Inside, the foyer she once scrubbed on her hands and knees now glitters with people in tuxedos and sequins. Caterers weave through the crowd with trays of canapes. A jazz trio plays near the staircase. For a heartbeat, she feels that old urge to disappear into the wallpaper. Then a familiar voice says, You clean up well, Miller. She turns. Ethan stands there in a tailored black tux, bow tie slightly loose like he rebelled at the last second. For a moment, she forgets how to speak. You too, she manages. You look less like Castle Guy and more like Castle magazine cover. He laughs, the sound warm. Come on, he says. There are some people I want you to meet. He introduces her to board members, donors, city officials. Some smile kindly. Some give her the polite, puzzled look reserved for people who do not fit into their mental spreadsheet. Grace runs peer view comments. Ethan says each time, making it clear she is not a token guest. She is part of the reason they are all here. During dinner, she ends up at a table with Priya, a couple of foundation staffers, and Harold Green's impeccably dressed wife. Conversation is fine, safe, until Harold himself leans over from the next table, voice carrying a little too loudly. So, Ms. Miller, he says, what is it like being our CEO's latest project? The table stiffens. Grace sets her fork down carefully. I wouldn't call it that, she says. We're partners on the peer view initiative. Harold smiles thinly. Partners, he repeats. And how does it feel to jump from mopping floors to advising on multi-million-dollar decisions? Quite the upgrade. A few guests chuckle nervously. Grace feels heat crawl up her neck. She can sense eyes turning toward their table, curiosity sharpening. Somewhere across the room, the jazz trio slows. Honestly, she says, forcing her voice to stay even. It feels overdue that someone who actually lives in these buildings gets a say in what happens to them. Harold's smile curdles. Of course. And when this little experiment stops being cute and starts cutting into returns, will you be sticking around to answer to our shareholders? Before she can find words, another voice cuts through the tension. She won't have to. Ethan stands at the edge of the table, expression carved from stone. The room hushes. Even the clink of silverware fades. Because I will, he continues. I will look them in the eye and tell them why this matters. And I will tell them that if they want a company that squeezes every cent out of people like Grace, they're in the wrong room. Murmurs ripple across the tables. Harold opens his mouth, but Ethan lifts a hand. You want to talk about returns? He says. PeerView's vacancy rate dropped to near zero this quarter. Maintenance costs are down because people take care of what they feel invested in. Crime reports in that block have already declined. Grace's upgrade is already paying off. His gaze softens when it moves to her. And for the record, she was never just a mop and a paycheck. She was always this person. We're just finally smart enough to listen. The words punch through her defenses. Something hot pricks at the corners of her eyes. She looks down, willing herself not to cry. Now, Ethan says, raising his glass. If you'll excuse us, we have a story to tell. He offers her his hand. She hesitates, then takes it, letting him lead her toward the small stage at the front of the room. The spotlight feels strange on her face. The microphone is heavier than she expects. As she looks out at the sea, of expensive clothes and expectant eyes, she remembers the first time she stood in this house, terrified of losing a job. Tonight, she stands here terrified of something else entirely, being seen. She takes a breath. My name is Grace Miller, she says, voice steadier than she feels. I live at Peerview Apartments with my 8-year-old son. Before this year, those words, Peerview Apartments, meant stress. They meant leaks we couldn't get fixed and rent notices we couldn't afford. Tonight, they mean something different. They mean a community center downstairs that belongs to us. They mean kids who have a safe place to go after school. They mean neighbors meeting each other as more than just faces in a hallway. She glances at Ethan. He nods, eyes shining with pride that has nothing to do with money. This is what happens, she continues, when someone with power decides that people are not just numbers. This is what happens when we build with, not just on top of, the people who live in our buildings. The room is silent, but it is not a hostile silence. It is the kind that holds its breath. I used to think my place in a house like this was in the shadows, she finishes. Tonight, I guess I'm in the light. And I'm not here because someone did me a favor. I'm here because we did the work. Together. The applause starts in one corner and spreads, gathering force. Somewhere in the crowd, Harold claps last, face unreadable. Grace steps back, heart racing, and Ethan leans in just enough to whisper, "You were incredible." She laughs shakily. "You just told a room full of billionaires that people like me matter. You're the one in trouble." "Maybe," he says. "But for the first time, it feels like the right kind of trouble." The gala winds down in a blur of handshakes and congratulations. Donors approach Grace with questions, not pity. A city councilwoman asks if she would consider helping replicate the Pierview model in other buildings. By the time the last guests drift toward the valet stand, Grace's feet ache, but her heart feels oddly light. In the quiet that follows, the mansion seems to exhale. Staff clear plates. Musicians pack up instruments. Out on the terrace, away from the clatter, the ocean beats its steady rhythm against the rocks below. Grace slips out there to catch her breath. The night air is cool, salted, cleansing. She leans on the stone railing, looking out at the dark water. Somewhere down there is the same shoreline she sees from her apartment window, only framed now by a different kind of glass. Hiding from your fans. Ethan's voice comes from behind her, amused. She turns to find him in the doorway, bow tie undone, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He looks less like a CEO and more like the man who made dinosaur pancakes at dawn. Just needed some air, she says. I've never talked that much without a mop in my hand. He steps beside her, resting his forearms on the railing. For a while, they simply stand there, listening to the waves. You were right, you know, he says quietly. About what? About stories, he answers. Tonight felt different because it wasn't just me rattling off statistics. It was you, telling them what it feels like to live inside the decisions we make. I've spent years looking at this city from up here, like a map. You made me see it from the ground. The sincerity in his voice makes her look away, suddenly shy. You did the hard part, she says. You changed your mind. You signed the papers. You could have ignored me. I tried, he says, lips quirking. Didn't work. That draws a laugh from her, soft but real. A breeze lifts a strand of hair into her face. Without thinking, he reaches over and tucks it behind her ear. The gesture is small, but it sends a current through both of them. They freeze, awareness crackling in the inches between them. Grace, he says, her name a low note. I know there's a line, she says quickly, words tumbling over each other, between boss and employee, landlord and tenant, castle guy, and whatever I am. I don't want to mess up everything we're building at Pierview because we got sentimental on a balcony. You're not messing anything up, he says. If anything, you're the one who keeps me from messing it up. He turns, facing her fully now. I've been thinking about that night you brought Noah here. How desperate you must have been. And how, if I had sent you away into that storm, I would have never known any of this. I would still be that man on the phone, talking about numbers and never asking who was under the roof. People change, she says. Sometimes. You changed me, he replies simply. There it is. The truth neither of them has dared to say out loud. Her heart hammers. Ethan. I know this is complicated, he says. But I also know that every time my phone buzzes and it's a message from you, my day stops feeling like a list of tasks and starts feeling like it might actually matter. When Noah runs up to show me his test scores, I feel proud in a way I haven't felt since I signed the papers on my first building. When I walk into Pierview Commons and see kids at those tables you fought for, I feel home. The word hangs there, startling them both. Grace thinks of her own definition of home, of late bills and cracked tiles, yes, but also of Noah's laughter and the smell of grilled cheese in a cramped kitchen, of paint smudges on her hands at the community center and sticky notes on blueprints. Home isn't a mansion, she says softly. You know that. I'm starting to, he agrees. He takes a breath. I don't want to be just the man who signs your paycheck. I want to be the man who shows up for parent-teacher conferences and Saturday pizza nights, and whatever else this life throws at us. I want to be in it. With you. Her eyes sting. You're asking me to trust a landlord, she says, voice trembling with something like humor and fear all at once. That's a big ask. I'm asking you to trust Ethan, he says. The idiot who needed a single mom and her kid to remind him he has a heart. A tear escapes. She swipes it away with the back of her hand, laughing at herself. Noah likes you, she says. He thinks you listen funny. Ethan smiles. He's not wrong. If we do this, she warns, it has to be slow. We keep Pierview on solid ground. We keep the foundation and the community center running like real things, not just backdrops for your redemption arc. Agreed, he says. No grand gestures then? She thinks of the eviction notice, of the letter canceling it, of the blueprints covered in notes. Oh, I think you've already used up your quota, she says. From here on out, it's little gestures. Showing up, doing the dishes, helping with homework. I can learn, he says. I've gotten pretty good at dinosaur pancakes. She laughs, the sound bright in the night air. That's a start. He hesitates one last time, giving her space to step back. She doesn't. So he leans in and kisses her, gentle at first, like a question. She answers by reaching up, fingers curling into the lapel of his jacket, pulling him closer. When they break apart, the ocean is still roaring, the stars still indifferent. But something essential has shifted. The castle does not feel so cold. Later that week, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, Grace sits on a lounge chair in Ethan's backyard garden, watching Noah chase a soccer ball across grass so perfect it looks fake. A grill sizzles nearby. Mrs. Jenkins laughs with Priya over plastic cups of lemonade. Peer-view neighbors mingle with foundation staff, the lines between us and them blurring under the smell of charcoal and sunscreen. Ethan drops onto the chair beside her, handing her a plate with a burger exactly the way she likes it. You realize, she says, that you've turned your billionaire mansion into the world's fanciest block party. Good, he says. About time this place earned its keep. Noah kicks the ball toward them, overshooting wildly. It bumps against Ethan's leg. Did I score? Noah calls. You definitely did. Ethan answers, nudging the ball back. He glances at Grace. Think he'd be okay if I officially joined the team? She threads her fingers through his. You're already in the family group chat, she says. That's more serious than any contract you've ever signed. He laughs, squeezing her hand. Somewhere in the house, a security camera records a simple, ordinary moment. A woman, a man, and a boy in a sunlit yard. No headlines. No contracts. Just a new kind of wealth, measured not in square footage or stock prices, but in belonging. Grace leans her head on Ethan's shoulder. The mansion at their backs, the future unwritten, but finally, blessedly, theirs to build. The storm that drove her here feels like another lifetime. She took her son to work one desperate night and had no idea that the man who owned the castle would become the one who helped them build a home.